Welcome back to Sunday Vibes 1 and it's me, it's Chris, it's Pat, back in the pub to answer your burning questions. And the first one was sent in by regular contributor Sam Goz. Shout out Sam. He says, who should Chelsea sign in January now the ban has been lifted? We are getting there, midway through December, not long to go. Of course, they had that 2-window ban for 150 breaches of regulation, which has now been reduced by 6 months.
You sign 150 players illegally and only serve a 1-window ban?
Well, it's happened before to Manchester City and they didn't even get banned. So I think that was part of the argument that Chelsea made. They also saw their fine reduced by 50% from 260,000 to 130,000. And the CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, have said, that's it, you're done, sign who you want. So January comes around. Who does Frank need? Who wants to lead off? Pato, any suggestions for who Frankie boy needs?
No, not really. I don't really have any strong suggestions. I think that Chelsea are clearly third best team in the country.
Do you think not better than Leicester?
They're quite clearly better than Leicester. Like by the stats, they're miles better than Leicester, and I think when you watch them, like they're generally quite a lot better than Leicester. Plus, they're more robust as a squad. Like they've had to deal with some significant squad injuries so far this season, and yet they were absolutely fine. But really, my issue here is just that there's not generally good value available in January. Like you look at Chelsea's squad, and I don't see the point of them going and getting a kind of second-tier left-back or something, rather than just waiting for the summer and going for somebody who's great.
Like Chilwell?
Yeah, well, if you can get him, then Chilwell would be perfect.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, there's a part of me that thinks I wouldn't have even necessarily have appealed the decision. I'd have let it ride so that if in future you ever need kind of a little bit of clout with the Court of Arbitration for Sport, you can say, well, we didn't contest that one. I don't really know who they're going to, unless they think, oh, okay, we can go and we're going to try and get Sancho or somebody like that who will transform the future of a position in their first 11. I don't really see the value. Because right now, I mean, yes, they have struggled at left back a little bit, though of course Aspi could play there as Reece James comes into the side. Emerson will come back from injury and will be hopefully as good as he was at the start of the campaign. But generally speaking, they need to think about centre backs too. But none of it's urgent. I think they're playing extremely well. Last few weeks they've been very unlucky, not to get results. You look at say the West Ham game when they were unbelievably dominant, and just somehow got sucker
They
punched.
weren't poor against Everton though.
They were, but that's the first game in a long time where they've been the inferior side. And so I just think they're even better than Liverpool at home, and they were unlucky to get nothing out of that game. So I look at them and I just think I would kind of keep things going as they are, unless there's an insane opportunity, and I'm not sure that there is that opportunity in January.
I think, so for me, I think that Chelsea are probably the fourth best team. I agree that Leicester are punching above their weight statistically, but I just think they're putting together that sort of run and form that we saw when they won the title, where everything goes their way and they will end up finishing probably second or something like that. And I think Chelsea, I think they desperately need a centre-back in.
But even if they do finish second, I'm not saying that Chelsea will definitely finish above Leicester, because Leicester are getting very lucky as well. But what I'm saying is I don't think Chelsea have much to fear from the teams below them. I think Chelsea are clearly in that top four bracket, and I'm not sure that Spurs or United really have that much.
I think when United get Pogba back, they might put together a little bit of a run of results.
Maybe.
But I just think that the opportunity might well be there in January to get Kalidou Koulibaly. With the problems at Napoli, with the Di Laurentiis situation, talking openly about selling his players. We've seen Carlo leave in the week. Obviously, despite winning 4-0, those problems have hit him hard, haven't they? The off-the-field training ground issues. And he's talked about being willing to sell the three instigators, which I think were Alan, Mertens and Koulibaly. And I think if you can get Koulibaly out of Napoli and Di Laurentiis is willing to sell for once at a cut price fee, then you should get him. I just don't see why you wait to the summer. That problem might well have resolved itself by the summer. He might well have got a new manager in. That new manager might have settled the squad again, and the players might have fallen back into line. I'm not sure that problem will last for 6 months, and if you can get Koulibaly in January to come in and transform your defence, I just don't think Zuma and Christensen are good enough. I think Rudiger, when he comes back from injury, will stabilise them a lot, and Tomori's obviously extremely talented, but I think Christensen and Zuma are backups. In that position, if you were to build a team that was going to contend for a title, when Koulibaly comes in as an immediate starter.
I mean, that would pretty much shore up, maybe even wrap up fourth place for them if they signed someone of Koulibaly's pedigree and quality in January. I don't think he'll move, especially with Napoli parting ways with Carlo Ancelotti. Gattuso is apparently going to come in. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed yet. We know he's a very defence-minded manager and will want to keep his defensive personnel. Chelsea have just been really interesting, haven't they, in this first half of the season. Like Pat said, by expected points, the third best side in the country, although I do think their attack is much better than their defence. I think Leicester's defence is better than Chelsea's, which is what makes it a little bit more unclear. That muddies the waters as to who's going to finish highest, right?
Yeah, they've got the worst defence of any of the top 10 sides, haven't they?
Yeah, though that's mostly about shot stopping than it is about stopping chances. That's a Kepa issue.
Yeah, they only concede 9.5 shots, but they are quite high quality chances, and I think we've touched upon this in previous scripts. Kepa is not having a great season by any means, is he? They're actually taking the second most amount of shots after Manchester City. So it was a little bit puzzling for me when Frank Lampard, post securing qualification for the Champions League round of 16, said we need to replace Eden Hazard in January. Of course, his goal contributions were insane, over 200 in that seven-season stretch. Pulisic's actually taken the most touches in the box for a Chelsea player, which was really interesting when I sort of looked at some of the more granular numbers. He's taken around 8, and I think Tammy's taken around 6. So he is starting in a very Raheem Sterling way to arrive late in the box, and he was super unlucky against Villa not to score as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He got a little round of applause when he came off. The Chelsea fans have taken to him after that really slow start. So I was going back to Lampard's comments. I was a bit puzzled when he said we need to replace Eden Hazard's creativity. And for me, I don't know if you're a Chelsea fan, if the alarm bells are ringing there, because that is neglecting the left-back issue. Yes, Emerson was having a good season while he was there, but I think it's become quite clear that Lampard doesn't see him or Alonso as the long-term solution at left-back, although Alonso has signed a £100,000 a week contract that runs until 2023. So good luck eating those wages. And I think Ben Chilwell, one of you boys mentioned it, would be an unbelievable signing, but also unbelievably hard to get out of Leicester in January. With Leicester having an outside chance, a very, very outside chance at another title shot, they are not going to sell anyone in January.
No, it's a summer move, isn't
it?
I
think we should just discount that straight away. And I think they could probably, if they finish above Chelsea, which, the odds are very good at the moment, they could probably convince players to stay. I think the only clubs they would sell to are Liverpool and Manchester City. I think they could probably stay and get them to buy into the project, building that new training ground, in the market for another striker as well as Jamie Vardy, who is running very hot, and that's where a lot of the discrepancy is with the XG, right? Because he scored about 6 more goals than expected, because some of them have been unbelievable finishes this year. Which it's a hard stick to beat Leicester with, that your XG is so out of kilter because he is such a good finisher. So Nathan Ake is an option. They have a 40 million buyback clause in his. When they sold him to Bournemouth for 20, they inserted that clause in there.
Injured again though, so I don't think they'll leave for him in January.
Injured again.
I'm not a specialist.
That's interesting, yeah. And also, when he was at Chelsea, they weren't convinced by his height, and they moved him out to left back as a result, didn't they? And that's kind of bore out in the numbers. Like I think his aerial success rate is around 49%, which pales in comparison to someone like Zuma or Rudiger's 70% plus. However, very, very good in the tackle when he chooses to go in, 75% win rate, and Christensen's is like 35%. And you've been very critical of Christensen in recent weeks.
Yeah,
so would you buy him for 40 to bring him in as a rotation option? I don't know what the extent of this injury is though.
I don't think I would sign Nathan Ake. I don't think he's a significant enough upgrade on a Zuma or a Christensen or a Tomori.
Are you looking for a starter though?
Yeah, I think I'm looking for a partner for Rudiger that's going to be the first name on the team. Well, one of the first names on the team sheet. A real
so binning off Zuma.
I like Zuma at a sort of an Everton level, but I think to be challenging for league titles and going fairly deep in the Champions League, I think you need more than Kurt Zuma. I think Christensen, as good as he is on the ball,
he's better in a 3, I think.
He's definitely better in a 3, and I think he's a little bit too lightweight. I think what we saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin do to him on the weekend should not be happening to any centre-back that's in those top 4.
That's top 4 aspirations.
Yeah, the Calvert-Lewin does do that to a lot of centre.
Definitely
that's the thing that Calvert-Lewin
does. Winning headers.
But it's
physically
not.
Yeah, he's great.
Christensen's
You've seen those abs,
first
mate?
time of doing it. What I will say is it's not helped by the fact Kepa, like you've already brought up, is having a fairly poor season. So is there room potentially for a goalkeeper to be brought in
I don't think they'll
to
do
compete
it.
with him? I know he's the most
They won't do
expensive
it.
keeper in the world, but
They'll give him another 18 months to get it right, I imagine, because he's not costing them at the moment in a particularly meaningful way. They are shipping. They're shipping more goals than they're supposed to. Yeah, but I don't think no one was really critical of him for that Everton result, were they? I think it was more of a team performance. I mean, conceding that goal at the end through the legs was
weirdly
fairly poor.
People aren't. Yeah, well, it was his pass as well that created that counter.
Sure,
But it's, I don't know. The thing is about Kepa, like, there's not much reason to think that he's going to become a really good keeper. He might become slightly better, but actually, like, he's performing about the level. Well, not right now, but like last season, he performed about the level that he did in Spain. Where it wasn't like David De Gea, where David De Gea was amazing in Spain. Then he came to the UK and had a bad season and a half, and everyone was like, well, if he gets back to his Spain form, then he'll be great. Like with Kepa, there's been no stage of his career where he's been an above average shot stopper, so that's a bit concerning.
You're saying like no evidence that he can play above the level he's playing at now?
Well, yeah, I mean, like it's just like, it's kind of like signing a player who's just like never really scored like 5 Premier League goals and being like, maybe you'll get 15 for us. Like maybe you will, but like the odds are kind of against it. I don't know why you'd have faith in it. On the other hand, they spent so much that I just don't think they'll do it.
What about a backup for Tammy? Because it's quite clear, I think, that Giroud is out of favour with Lampard.
He's asked to go, hasn't he?
He's probably going to leave in January, it seems like. I think he signed a year contract extension at the start, didn't
He's been out of the last 2 match day squads, which is pretty damning.
And when Tammy was injured and he came in, he really, really struggled, didn't he? He had a bit of a mess. So I think he'll probably go, which leaves just Tammy and Michy. Now,
who gets a lot of minutes.
He's getting quite a few minutes, but I wonder whether Frank's going to want somebody to compete a little bit more with Tammy.
He uses the way he uses Batshuayi is really smart, because there are a bunch of studies by like football stats companies which basically suggest that if you put on that you should sub on a striker, regardless of basically what's going on, kind of about between 60 and 70 minutes. Because they almost always put up disproportionately high, like expected goals numbers in the last 20, 30
Just causing havoc with the shape and stuff.
Yeah, even if you just swap them for the striker who's there, like they're a bit fresher, like they're not, so relatively speaking, they're stronger than defenders, they can do a bit more running.
Yeah.
And I think that somebody said this to Lampard, because he does it every single game. Every single game.
Interesting.
It's really smart. And so I don't know, it seems like
keep
he has...
hold of Michy, just...
Well, I'd keep hold of him, certainly. Like, I mean, even if you're not going to like play him, you would keep hold of him in the hope that he gets some minutes in some form and maybe you sell him on at some point. But this is where maybe you could also go back to Napoli, because you could... It depends what profile of striker you want, but you could easily look at Dries Mertens. There were rumours he was going to be around for 15 million euros in January. And while it's not a great long-term move, and you wouldn't want to give him more than, say, an 18-month, 2-year contract, I think that's absolutely fine. Like, because you've got a guy who can play wide as well. And while Willian's in decent form at the moment, I wouldn't bank on that lasting for a great length of time.
Yeah, they're also linked with Moussa Dembele, your old boy.
Moussa.
He's not going to accept a backup roller.
Yeah, I think
he's too good.
I think he's ready to start. He makes more sense at a team like Manchester United as well, like who have wingers who are just going to love playing off of him. Like, not only is he unbelievably good in the air, he's very, very mobile as well, and very quick, and likes to drift out to that left-hand side. So you could see him interchange him really nicely with someone like Rashford or someone like Martial. I think the two people we've already mentioned, that deserve a little bit more coverage is probably Jadon Sancho. One of them even. Jadon Sancho, it makes sense him moving to Chelsea, right, as opposed to a series of other teams he's been linked with. So I think there's just that opening on the right-hand side, despite Willian's renaissance this season, to come into the side and make a big impact. He is contributing at a frightful rate, isn't he? I think it's a goal or assist every 117 minutes at his career at Dortmund. And you feel like he's angling for a move back to the Premier League. That's why he went to Dortmund, so he could eventually come back to the Premier League. I mean, there's definitely an opening for him at Bayern Munich, for example. Like, he could go there. They're in desperate need of a winger. I mean, Serge Gnabry's been great, but Kingsley Coman had to come off injured again at the weekend.
He's done his ACL last night, I think.
Yeah, I didn't know, again, the extent of the injury. Yeah. Have you just been specifically going through people's injuries on
Twitter?
No,
I was writing UCL review this morning. I don't know if you've seen the photo.
It looks like that.
Yeah, his studs, I saw his studs got kind of stuck in the ground. That's come off.
And his knee went
for Muller. And he's said for quite some time, if he has one more significant injury, that's it for him in football, because he has just had a harrowing time of it. So, yes, like traditionally, if he wasn't English, Bayern would probably snap him up and you'd say that's a bit of a foregone conclusion. Maybe less so if they've got Leroy Sané in. But it makes sense for him to be at Chelsea. Whereas you look at kind of like Liverpool, who have also been linked with him, it causes more problems than it's probably worth at this point. Like getting him in January for 100 million euros, which I actually think is pretty good value. Like he's going to be worth double that if he carries on at this rate in like 2 years. So Chelsea, probably should go balls to the walls for someone like Jadon Sancho. But they've been linked a little bit more concretely with Wilf Zaha. What do you make of that for 80 mil?
I don't see any merit in that whatsoever.
Yeah, there's definitely interest from Chelsea
for sure.
in Zaha.
Yeah, but I don't think they should go for. I don't think they should really go for either of them. Like, because Pulisic pretty much couldn't have been better so far this season. He's been outrageous, and they've invested so much money and also kind of hype in Callum Hudson-Odoi that I think inevitably their plan is that Hudson-Odoi will play off the left and Pulisic will play off the right, which is actually where he played like for most of the time in Germany. Like, really, the weak link in that front four is Mason Mount. Like, if you look at those four, I think the player who I'd be happiest to get rid of is Mount, and that's not really a knock on him. It's just a testament to how good the other three are.
I think Hudson-Odoi's got a little bit of proving himself to do before you discount someone like
But
Mount.
taking some unnecessary
over
stick
him.
from Chelsea fans recently. So on Twitter, like Hudson-Odoi has been getting tarnished by Chelsea fans unnecessarily, I think.
But while he may have
Shock.
something to prove to some fans and might have something to prove to us, I think the club consider that he has already proven himself.
He's definitely got a higher ceiling, hasn't he?
Well, it's not necessarily even that. It's just that the club have given him this huge contract, which is saying, like, we're investing this huge amount of money in you. And so they obviously think that that's what he's going to be. And so once you do that, it would be incoherent for them to... If they hadn't done that, I'd be fine with them going for Sancho. But I don't think that they will because of that. So I'm sure they are interested in Zaha. But yeah, I think you could play Sancho in the 10 space instead of Mount, but they're never going to drop Mount either. So I find it really hard to see where the opening is in that front four.
Especially with Willian flying. I think if Willian had continued the spiral we saw, like, what was it, 10 months ago, then we would be saying definitely. But now Willian's playing well, I just don't think Frank's going to say halfway through the season. He might readdress it in the summer that Willian, you're out in the cold and I'm bringing 100 million worth.
For sure, less pressing with Willian. But do you think Chelsea, now that their transfer ban has been lifted, will just see this as maybe their only opportunity to sign someone like Sancho? And when I say like it caused problems at Liverpool, that is because, like, why upset the apple cart when you're about to win your first league title by, having to change formation by bringing someone like Jadon Sancho into the side or dropping someone like Firmino to force him in? At Chelsea, I think you could probably rotate with Willian quite easily. Like, they're in a couple of competitions, aren't they? There's going to be enough minutes to keep Jadon Sancho happy until the summer, when you maybe then start to phase Willian out, because realistically, how long is this purple patch going to last?
Well,
like, he's what, 31, 32?
Sancho wouldn't be able to play in the Champions League anyway, right?
It's changed the rulings. You can actually register. This changed last season. I was reading about it this morning. So you can register three new players for the round of 16 who have already played in the competition as well.
In the same competition?
Yeah, in the same competition.
It used to be like if they played in the Champions League,
Yeah.
they played in the Europa. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you could still maybe say, okay, well, you're going to get minutes in the Champions League, you're going to get minutes in the league.
Yeah, there's loads.
My concern is that I do just think Hudson-Odoi would say,
What are you doing?
right, send him out of there.
Yeah.
Like, I really do, and I think he'd be kind of justified in doing that. But I do agree in the sense that, like, if you think you can get Sancho and he's available for a reasonable amount of money, and I mean the level of talent that he is, you think, okay, maybe you go for it. But I think you've got to do it in the full knowledge that it might mean you lose Hudson-Odoi.
Yeah, I think realistically, the only place Chelsea look to strengthen is potentially another backup if Giroud leaves, and a centre-back signing. I actually don't think Sancho is realistic for January for Chelsea. They're definitely not going to sign a midfielder, and that left-back is just going to be given to Azpilicueta for 6 months.
Out of the names we discussed then, who's your top 3 targets?
If I had the Chelsea money...
If you're, the director of football.
Koulibaly, I think I would look to bring in. Probably, although I've said that I don't think it will happen, if you've got the money for Sancho, maybe you spend it. And then another, just a cheap backup striker, just to plug a hole.
I think if Koulibaly arrives, right, you're only then going to get another backup player. You're not going to spend 100 mil on Koulibaly, 100 mil on Sancho.
I don't think Koulibaly would cost 100 mil. I think he'll get a significant
left on his contract?
I don't know.
I
couldn't tell you.
I
I
think
think
2021.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think. I mean, there's.
I think
Di Laurentiis would probably deal at like 80, wouldn't he, at this point?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be too far away from the 100 that he could have got in the past.
You won't be able to get them both. You won't be able to get them both. But
financial fair play. That just
the only player they'll get,
ridiculous.
if they're going to get someone, I think might end up being Koulibaly. But I think they're going to see significant rivalry from Real Madrid. I think Real Madrid are going to really go for Koulibaly as well.
Interesting. Good for titles. Good for views. Who'd you go for?
I don't think I'd do anything.
Okay.
I don't think I'd do anything. Not unless like Sancho was a realistic possibility, or I'd probably actually talk to Real Madrid about maybe trying to get like Reguilon at the end of the season or something, because I still think, I don't know. I think actually, even if Leicester finish above Chelsea, I still think Chilwell would want to go to Chelsea. I really do. Like, I mean, let's not forget that Conte went to Chelsea in the season that Leicester won the league and Chelsea finished 10th. Like the draw of the wages and the size of the club still does mean something. So, but I think like a player like Reguilon would be a good backup, because Leicester have so much money that they can just charge you whatever they want.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some players. Now you've said Reguilon, that would be interesting from the continent as well, that might be available. You like thinking of Julian Draxler at PSG. Like, he's always a rotation option. He might be decent backup in attack for 6 months.
They're heavily linked with not for January but in the summer, Kai Havertz.
Okay, I mean that's a sign for the future. What, Chelsea are?
Chelsea were.
That makes no sense to me.
I think CF Bayern, Christian Falk tweeted that it was Real Madrid, Barcelona, Chelsea, Manchester City, Manchester United, particularly Manchester United, were very interested.
Well, he makes most sense for Man United.
Yeah, I mean, in a similar vein to Hudson-Odoi saying somehow, like Mason Mount, if you're trying to sign Kai Havertz, would be like this, I'm out. And he's seemingly, Lampard rates him as highly as anyone across that front four, you know, rightly or wrongly. Yeah, I think I'd go Ben Chilwell. I don't think they're going to get Ben Chilwell. And then I'd actually, after sort of being rebuffed, would sign Nathan Ake, because I think for 40 million, that's chump change for them, isn't it? Apparently they've got a £150 million war chest. Love how the word war chest has to follow a decent sum. I think the upside could be just like those marginal gains in defence might secure you 4th place. Like, he can play left back. I mean, he's not particularly good attacking left back, but he's much more defensively sound than someone like Alonso, probably as good as Emerson, defensively speaking. And he can play centre half as well, and is much more composed on the ball than Zuma, than Christensen. I mean, Christensen's very good at the ball, isn't he? But certainly Zuma. So yeah, I think I'd probably sign him, but sway more towards not doing a lot, actually.
Yeah, there's not much to be done either way. So what would you do? There he goes. What would you do with this Chelsea January window? Let us know in the comments below. Moving on to quickfire questions then. The first one was sent by Julius Hart 11, who says, who are some players who are unfairly criticised? Anybody that springs to mind this season? I want to say Rashford, who took absolute pelters for 6 weeks when he was playing through the middle as an isolated striker in a team that was underperforming. And everybody wrote him off and said he was terrible. And he's now crushing it whilst being moved out to the left. One of the most sensational pieces of, not management, but like work that I've seen from Ollie. Is getting more out of Rashford.
For sure. He's been absolutely unplayable the last few weeks, hasn't he? And like against Tottenham, it was like watching, like he sort of had the gravitas that like Ronaldo used to have on the wing. You know, every time he touched the ball, it's just like he is going to cause absolute havoc here. Yeah, long may it continue as well. A couple of people that have really changed people's opinions this season. Sorry to twist the question slightly. I can't really think of a good answer at the moment. Jorginho, Benzema, like they have been crucial to their sides this season, and were framed as, you know, past it last season, particularly Benzema in that regard. People just...
Do you think so?
People just saying
Benzema last season. People were defending him all over the place. Especially
we weren't,
we weren't, but we were the only ones. He got like 20 league goals going into this season.
It might have been the season before with Benzema. Then I certainly feel he's getting more credit this season. He's completed that journey back to being Real Madrid's main man and a reliable source of goals. The season before he got like 5 to 8 league goals, right? I can't remember.
I think it was 5.
So it must have been the season before, and he's fully completed that journey at the start of this season with his excellent start. But yeah, Jorginho certainly. Now Sarri's moved on. Now he's not being sort of tarred with the same brush as Sarri. Fickle football fans have certainly changed their opinion on him, and I think Chelsea are, you know, largely inferior side without him. Anyone else a little bit more apt, a bit more on the money?
It's a tough
It's a difficult question.
I mean, Vinicius, if you want to talk about Real Madrid, has gone from being like, this is the wonder kid who's going to be the heart of our side going forward, into being rated obviously below Hazard, but also below Rodrigo, I'd say. Even though, I don't know, if Rodrigo can achieve the level that Vinicius did last season, then that will be pretty damn exciting. Like, I don't know, it seems to be one of those things where Real Madrid fans, expect perfection very early on, seemingly forgetting that even when Ronaldo arrived, he wasn't perfect early on, and he was 5 years older than Vinicius is. So.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's unnecessary necessarily, but I think De Ligt has taken a lot of pelters early doors, just because I think of the nature of that Juve backline and the comparisons to a Chiellini and a Bonucci, everybody's been slamming him.
One of those incidences where like he was doing so well before, it got to the point where people almost wanted to see him fail or struggle a little bit. It was like Golden Boy Award, nominated for the next one, and Champions League semi-final.
I just think there just needs to be a bit of patience with him. Like he is going to come good, and everybody should know that, but people are still like, hey, look at the state of the league.
And Chiellini's injured. Like, imagine stepping in to those shoes. Chiellini is like one of the most perfect defenders in the modern game, and a club legend. And Bonucci, we know Bonucci is the less defensively sound, the more forward-thinking of the centre halves. So he's having to be Chiellini, which is probably one of the toughest asks in football. Juventus have been, I mean, not as defensively okay, I guess. Certainly, people have been playing, they're more competitive games now, aren't they, against Juventus, although they have been grinding out victories. Yeah, so I think De Ligt's a great answer.
Matuidi and Khedira as well. Like, in the summer, everyone was like, Jesus Christ, get these guys out. Thank God we've got Rabiot and Ramsey coming in. Like, that's really going to improve it. And don't get me wrong, like, an 11 with Ramsey and Rabiot is clearly better than an 11 with Khedira and Matuidi. But early in the season, Juventus were absolutely rolling. Like, even when their results didn't look quite as impressive, like, you watched them in games, they were dominating sides, and they were doing it with a Khedira and Matuidi like partnership in midfield, which is pretty remarkable, like, given the age of those guys. And
Bentancur has been great as well.
Khedira's, Bentancur, though, we were kind of always like, Bentancur needs to pay more. But I don't know, I've been, you don't want them to be starters long term, but I thought that getting some key results with those guys in midfield is pretty amazing work from Sarri.
Yeah.
Maybe Kovacic as well. Like, I'm not saying that people thought he was bad, but he had a bit of an underwhelming season last year. Didn't score a goal, of course, and already has, 2 this season, and is very much seen as the chief progressor of the ball at Chelsea. And he's doing a really, really good job, isn't he?
Yeah. Let's go to the next one then. This was sent in by Captain Kirk, who says, is it time to finally have a change at Bournemouth with them on a very poor run of form? 1 win in 12 under Eddie Howe.
That is ugly, isn't it?
Do you
think even the first time that's happened? Like,
probably not. Probably not. I don't think it's time for change at Bournemouth. I would stick with Eddie Howe. I think it's the right place, the right
Bournemouth
man.
be League One without Eddie Howe. They're not a Premier League club.
Look, for all of the stick we give Eddie Howe, we're not Eddie Howe's biggest fans. There are some people out there that link him consistently with top 6 jobs and say that he should be getting the Arsenal role and things like that. I don't think we've ever been ones to agree with that necessarily. We always kind of think he's a fair way off that, given that his defensive record is extremely poor.
It's probably the worst. He's been one of the worst defensive coaches in the league in the last decade.
I had a look at some of his numbers today since he's been in the Premier League, and I think he's gone conceded-wise 67, 67, 65 and 70 last year. Never really got the best out of a defence, despite spending some fairly sizable chunks on players, a lot of sort of £25 million, £20 million players, and having some of the richest owners in England. But it's just the right fit and the right man. He's going to keep them as a consistent Premier League team, sort of finishing between 16th and 14th. That's absolutely fine. That's where they should probably be. They're never going to be bigger than that.
That's not to say, his ceiling is higher than the club's. Like, if he becomes a more defensively astute coach, then I can see him going to a bigger club. Like, if he has a couple seasons where he changes it up and we see them as markedly better in defence, then give him that opportunity. But it is like, we always champion getting 3 points over going for a draw, right? Because that's how you stay up. That's how you remain competitive in the Premier League. And other teams who are struggling might be less forward-thinking than him, and we can't simultaneously champion people for being forward-thinking and criticise them for being totally, awful in defence.
Yeah.
But he does need to add a bit more nous.
He's just a middling manager. I think it's fine to be that.
Everton might be that club.
I personally don't think Everton are that club. I know that he's a big Everton fan, Eddie Howe, isn't he? But I think whoever comes into Everton needs to be particularly defensively astute, given that I think their personnel at the back is pretty mediocre to poor right now. I like Digne, don't get me wrong. I think Coleman's in need of an upgrade that area, and I think Yerry Mina and Michael Keane are both fairly average centre-backs. So whoever comes in at Everton, I think, needs to be a better defensive coach first, because the personnel going forward is actually okay, fairly strong, with great chances, like Gylfi Sigurdsson. So I don't think Eddie Howe's the right man. It's not to say he won't get the job.
But the underlying numbers of Everton, where the defence has been unlucky, the defence has been fine, and they're just not converting anything.
Yeah, but that is also towards the back end of last season as well, right? Including in that, when they had the likes of...
Was that the opening 10 games of this
season?
season?
They're conceding few shots, partially because they were playing this high-pressing system under Marco Silva, whereas Howe hasn't really shown an ability to create a high-pressing system. He hasn't shown an ability to suppress shots. He hasn't shown an ability to suppress high-quality chances. Like, you say, well, if he becomes like a better defensive coach, but I mean, like, it's actually quite rare that managers just suddenly get good at a thing they've always been bad at. Yeah, I don't know. I just basically think with Eddie Howe, like, if he suddenly learns to be a good defensive coach, then why can't all coaches learn to become good attacking coaches or good defensive coaches overnight? I just don't really see it happening, especially seeing as he's constantly praised for his work. So he doesn't really have an incentive. I think the only way he leaves Bournemouth is if he gets a better job offer.
Yeah, same here. Right, that's all we've got time for on this week's Sunday Vibes. If you want to get your question answered next week, make sure you stick it in the comments below or send it to us on Twitter during the week. Anything to plug before we wrap it up?
The usual podcast, go over to Euro Football Daily, check out Football Social, just
All of the norms.
keep switched on for when it goes live.
Yes, thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.